I would just
If you got a computer, you're so much more efficient.
I wasn't going to try because it's my
My first computer, I didn't want to risk coming in with the water.
I have this, so I was going to take different courses. But if you, like, it doesn't matter. I just like we're doing Canva. I'm doing Canva in your office and something.
I just don't know if I'm going to have time to type them up again. Yeah. Because I know I won't be able to type them up tonight.
Yeah, I won't either. Yeah. I'll just take it. I'll text you. Actually, I think I'll take
So, Taylor, why don't you take the initial notes and then I'll just like jot down, because I mainly do this so I can focus.
Yeah, I really know.
Okay, is that like a plan?
I don't know how to help.
And then I'll type them up by Friday.
Scary, yeah.
What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, what about that last one, 5?
There's 5 seats up front.
It's because they're up front.
Got a few minutes. Got a few minutes before we do start the meeting. Let me say a few words about public participation before the meeting starts. We have a policy which is on the table back there, and I invite everybody who wishes to participate in public participation to read that policy, because we will be following it. Basically, it says we will hear 6 people for 5 minutes each. We already have more signed up than we have time for. We're interested in what you say, but it's for us to listen to you. It's not, we're not going to give you feedback, answer questions, do that kind of thing. The thing that's a little unusual tonight is we have 2 opportunities for public participation. One is the general public participation, and then we have a special opportunity for anyone who wants to talk about the ESSER So if you're here to talk about ESSER, hold your, let's carry it over to the second time for public participation, which will occur when we reach that item on the agenda. Okay? Can y'all hear me all right with this? This is a brand new sound system tonight. For the last year, we've struggled with people not being able to hear us talk. And it took us a year to get this done because of state procurement regulations and so forth. But thank God we finally got it, and now maybe people can watch the video at home and so forth, and actually hear what's going on. Having done all that, I will call the meeting to order now. We lost a member of our school district family recently, John Harling, who was the assistant principal at Kennedy Middle School. So we typically open our meetings with a moment of silence. And I'd ask that during the moment of silence, if you were willing to remember him and his name. Please help us out. Thank you. Now, if you will, let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to remind all board members that before you speak, cut on your microphone. Next item is the approval of the agenda. We have submitted the agenda. Everybody's had an opportunity to view it. Questions?
Yes, sir. Dr. Bradley, I'd like to request and move, if that's required, to move one of the consent item number 5 to an individual item. I have some comments to make on that particular item and believe it'd be better suited as an individual item.
Okay, that's the revision policy GC.
No, sir, that's the consideration of one-time athletic funds.
All right.
So item 5 under consent to an
5B.
individual.
B5. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I'd like to, yes, sir.
Is there a second?
A second. I thought you did make the motion.
Okay, it's now a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so we'll move B5 to the end of the C list.
Thank you.
That will be C10. Okay. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We do have we found an error, an omission in the minutes of the meeting, July 13th meeting. That has been corrected, and the corrected copies in the purple folder. Essentially, the omission was that we did not list one of the speakers for that meeting. Mr. Pullen got left off, and so we put an acknowledgement that he was here and addressed the board. And that was the modification. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting for July 13th and the special call meeting for the board workshop on July 27th. Is the motion?
Move to, and second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Silas. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's it. Next is public participation. I've already given you a briefing on the rules. Each speaker will get 5 minutes. There's a clock up here that counts down. If you would, just follow, watch the clock. The people who called in will be called on first. We have Ms. Kim Martin and Ms. Shannon Medlock, who are here to talk about concessions.
board tonight in regards to prepackaged meals that are being required of our concession stands this year. By putting this mandate in place, not only are you not allowing us to have free reign of what we put in our concession stand, but you are limiting what we can and cannot sell. Mill and Valley concessions numbers alone have decreased since the beginning of the pandemic. I do understand certain guidelines are set forth for the safety of our children, but I do not agree with this motion. Take example, Mill and Valley. Our proceeds from our concession stands go towards the funding of our student athletes. We do not receive any money from the Aitkin County. As every child leaves Aitkin County, they receive $5 from the Booster Club per child to get meals for these out of county schools and tournaments or games that they go to. A lot of these kids don't have money, so we give them money so that they can afford something on the way home. And without this money, they don't eat. Our concession stands also give children money and food for the weekends. Without this concession stands and these prepackaged meals, we can't do that. We cannot give these kids a proper meal that they deserve for the weekends. We're just asking that you please look into this and let us open these concession stands. I have already contacted several counties, Horry, Newberry, York County, Greenwood County, Greenville County, Orangeburg County, Pickens, Oconee, Williston, Bamberg, Anderson, Richmond, and Columbia counties. None of their concession stands have been shut down. They are all in full speed. Yes, I know things change, but right now we are asking that you please allow us to serve meals to these kids. These kids come straight from school. They don't go home. We provide them meals. You know, the prepackaged meals, that's not going to help these kids. Prepackages, you know, chips, cookies, candy. That's not a substantial meal for these kids. We provide them hot dogs, hamburgers. I know it's not a nutrition like they should be getting, but at least they're getting a substantial meal. We just ask that you please, please, please look forward and change these guidelines. Just one example, in 2018, our concession stands profited $20,000. In 2019, they did $15,000, and last year we only did $7,500. That's combined for football, softball, baseball, basketball, volleyball, and soccer. We're just asking that you please, please, please reconsider this guideline for this year.
I'm Shannon Matlock, M-A-T-L-O-C-K, not Medlock. Good evening. This year I'm the incoming president for the Band Boosters of Midland Valley. Band Boosters at Midland Valley, we not only support the high school, we support two feeder schools, Lavelle Campbell and LBC. We have a budget this year of $54,000, which is not large in the grand scheme of things. I understand that to us it's huge. Half of our budget comes to us from student fees, $250 if they're in both the symphonic or concert band and the marching band. So that's not a lot of money. So that leaves us half of that to raise. As an example, what Kim quoted on their profits, we're much smaller. In 2019, we had a profit of $2,848. In 2020, we profited $13 in the band booster concessions. That's not much. And these kids use that money to pay their fees. We use this money to help the band. We buy classroom equipment, we repair instruments, we buy new instruments at other times. In addition, we buy the music that the band performs, we pay instructors to write the drill. We cannot do this without the concession stands going at full staff. Again, I beg you, say to Ms. Martin, to take a look at this guideline and please reconsider. Without this, our band can't function, and kids don't just join the band to get an easy credit so they can pass high school. They join the band because they love music, and the band teaches them how to work together as a team, how to become better adults, and we need to be able to support them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Somebody will be in touch with you about your question. Next item is the South Carolina School Boards Association Board of Institute recognition.
Mr.
Dr. Bradley, members of the board, Mr. Lawrence, members of the public. I do want to mention, my name is Mike Roser. I'm the Director of Communications here for Aitkin County Public Schools. And we do have 2 streams going tonight. Tonight is the first night that we're utilizing our new audiovisual equipment. And so I thought it pertinent and prudent to have both streams. That way we can ensure that everyone can view tonight's meeting. So there are 2 links on our homepage. The first one is the one that you're used to. That is the Boxcast link. The one below that is the Swagit link. And so please take a moment and utilize both and give us some feedback. communications@acpsd.net. Our recognition tonight, if Mr. Lawrence could go ahead and come down to the front. We have 2 board members on the Aitkin County Board of Education who have earned recognition by the South Carolina School Boards Association for achievement in the association's 2020-21 Boardsmanship Institute. The SCSBA Boardsmanship Institute was established in 1982, and it offers year-round training, a year-round training curriculum to help board members develop skills and stay abreast of state and national education issues. Workshops focus on school law, advocacy and legislation, improving board operations, leadership for improving student achievement, and other timely topics. Tonight, District 9 and Area 1 School Board member Mr. Cam Nessel has earned Level 2 in the Boardmanship Institute. To qualify for this recognition, he earned 40 points for participation in training sessions over the past year. And if he'll come forward, he can receive a certificate and also a lapel pin from the School Boards Association. I have some folks come up front, share a photo. Mr. Nessel, if you'll hang around here just for a second. Our second board member tonight is District 4 and Area 2 School Board member Dr. Patricia Hanks. She has earned Level 1 in the Boardsmanship Institute, and to qualify, she needed to earn 25 points for participation in training sessions over the past year. Yeah, that may be due to the... Oh. I did it. I won't sing the night the lights went out in the boardroom. But we also each year like to welcome our students back, which that'll be Monday, August the 16th, which many of us have had on the calendar for quite some time. And our school board traditionally welcomes them back on the board meeting preceding that by taking a photo with a sign that we have welcoming them back, and we'll share on our website and social media. So if I could get the board members to come down to the front, we'll take a quick photo, and then we'll be able to move forward with the meeting. Sheila can pretty much stand where she wants.
That's because she's a giant among people.
A giant among people, well said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again to Mr. Nessel and Dr. Hanks. Thank you so much.
We now depart from the printed agenda and go to the individual sign-ups that people did as they into the boardroom. First one I got tonight was from Mr. Dave Pullen. Mr. Pullen, it's yours associated with ESSER, or do you want to do it now?
It is distinct and separate. I would like the opportunity to speak now.
Do it now?
Yes, sir. Now.
All right, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, trustees. Thank you for your time.
Introduce yourself, Mr. Pullen.
My name is David Paulin. Dave Paulin. I'm District 9 with Mr. Nussel as my trustee. I would like to discuss a couple of acronyms with you this evening. They are SEL and CASEL. SEL stands for Social and Emotional Learning. CASEL is a body that generates and advocates for social emotional learning. They are known as the Consortium for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. SEL is linked here in our Aitkin County Public School District to the organization known as CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, which I just explained for you. SEL is used to influence not only our students in the schools, but it is also used to influence the parents and the communities in every single possible way. They are an all-encompassing effort, and they exist here in Aitkin County Public School District. There are 5 core competencies that CASEL has laid forward, and those 5 competencies are obvious and they are used within the Aitkin County Public School District. One school in particular that I will articulate is Aitkin Intermediate School. This is a 6th grade only school, and they advocate and specifically state that SEL is the focus of what they do. And these 5 core competencies that I tell you come from CASEL are specifically indicated on that school's homepage, okay? So there is linkage between SEL in our schools and CASEL, and I gave you a specific example of where CASEL has its competencies on our state, on our county school pages, okay? There certainly are some redeeming qualities to social and emotional learning, such as teamwork, character building, virtuous character traits, things of that nature. However, social emotional learning also is being manipulated by the organization known as CASEL, and I'm going to shed light on what they refer to as their leverage for equity. And let me explain that in detail for you. SEL, in my opinion, should not be a substitute for what we consider to be traditional counseling in our schools. We have counselors, we have counselor guidance and policies already established, and those should not be substituted by the SEL application in our schools, okay? CASEL is aligned with, and they specifically support, programs and practices designed to mitigate racial and class oppression. How? By using SEL as a lever for equity, social justice, supporting anti-racist practices, and dismantling inequities. Let me quote to you from a CASEL assessment work group titled Equity and Social Emotional Learning, a Cultural Analysis from November 2018. SEL has the potential to help mitigate the interrelated legacies of racial and class oppression in the U.S. and globally. Currently, that potential is underrealized. And I quote again, white elites promulgated racialized and cultural stereotypes to recruit poor and working whites into a system that exploited them, but also empowered them to impress and further exploit people of color. This is a quote footnoted from Thomas W. Allen, who wrote the book Invention of the White Race in 1994, and this gentleman is an avowed Marxist. So I'm tying what CASEL equates to an equity lens in the SEL agenda to the Marxists that they footnote in their documentation. I just want you to be aware of how this linkage exists. Now, let me give you a couple more points in my remaining time. CASEL, via SEL, perpetuates class warfare, racial division, not unity. CASEL, via their equity lens, suggests that whiteness equals wealth, white racial entitlement and dominance, negative bias, and negative stereotype of people of color and low-income backgrounds. Now I ask you these questions. Do we truly believe that we have a system of oppression here in Aitkin County? And right here in our schools, what is this message of equity? How will educational equity, which is what CASEL and SEL advocate for, how will that be measured? How will we come to know when we have achieved this equity that social emotional learning advocates for? When will that happen? And as I look at the board, and as I look at the room, and as I live and work in this community, I see that we have racial equity amongst many of our institutions. In perfect case in point is the board of members that I'm looking at right now. So I ask you, take a hard look at your social emotional learning plan, look at the linkage that is tied to CASEL, and CASEL has a critical race theory bias in their propaganda and in their written literature, and I'd be more than glad to provide videos on YouTube and also documentations and PDF files to any member of the board that would like me to provide the sources for the quotes that I just gave you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pullen. Time expired. We don't ordinarily respond to speakers, and we're not going to do that at any length, but I would like to make one statement. We have no formal or informal agreements with council. That's a good deal. Next person requesting opportunity to speak is Natalie Bland. And she's here to talk about the decision made by the school district athletic directors regarding athletics.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Bland, and I'm going to be a junior at Aitkin High. Before I start, I wanted to thank every single board member here and the superintendent for your endless amounts of service and dedication to the students of Aitkin County Public Schools. I know that this past year has been nearly impossible to navigate, and your willingness to lead has definitely not gone unnoticed. I'm here speaking in front of all of you today because I'm a member of the varsity volleyball team at Aitkin High School. Late last week, our team was informed that there was a decision made by the school district's ADs to prevent athletic teams, including volleyball, from participating in contests that involve more than 2 teams because of COVID concerns. Essentially, our team is not able to participate in any tri-matches, tournaments, or multi-team games this season. In all honesty, and I can speak for the entire Aitkin High program and multiple other programs, we are very disappointed in this decision for 2 major reasons. First, as student athletes, we all believe that it's very important to keep our safety as a primary concern. However, last season, we were able to complete our season with clear protocols in place. This included in participating in tri-matches and tournaments. Now, this season, we are not even being given the chance to implement these protocols. Rather to take steps to maintain a full season, we are resorting to simply canceling all of these events. Secondly, the decision has put our team at a distinct competitive disadvantage. This decision was not made by the South Carolina High School League, but by Aitkin County Public Schools individually. As a result, no other schools in our state are losing any play dates in their season. Our team has 5 tournaments, including one that will be hosted by Aitkin High School and was supposed to be the largest tournament in the state, and a number of tri-matches that will now be lost. Because other schools in the state are subject to these cancellations and have full schedules, these play dates cannot be rescheduled. Ultimately, I believe that this decision is detrimental to the student athletes of Aitkin County Public Schools. I have had the honor of participating on a club team that has just finished traveling around the country and competing in many different tournaments. Many of those tournaments took precautions that we, as student athletes, are willing to adhere to in order to have a full season. These include playing in masks, complete screenings, leaving the building when not playing, and many other COVID-specific protocols. Not a single event during that season was simply canceled. Our team also has an incredible chance to have a successful season, and by making a decision that only impacts our school district, I believe that we have been put at a distinct disadvantage towards reaching our potential. It is my sincere hope that the school board and district will revisit this decision before our team is forced to make cancellations. Thank you so much for your support of student athletes.
Next speaker is Joy Aitkin, is that right? Aitkin, who's here to talk about bug testing.
I'm going to yield my time to Ms.
Hi, my name is Corey Osteen. I'm a mother of 2 former South Aitkin students. I'm actually vote that's coming up this evening. As you just heard, how incredibly important the student athletics is to the students, what a core part of their life it is, and how much it takes, how much focus it takes for them. And I'm sorry, it's really hard for me right now. So this is a rough month for me right now. But anyways, my oldest daughter, she was a student athlete. She started as a gymnast, and she was a soccer player and cheerleader. We moved her in 2013, and that's when she attended South Aitkin as a junior. And she did not, I don't really know why, but she didn't decide to continue into sports. I think because she was new, it was kind of a struggle getting acclimated to the new school. She was able to, I'm sorry, this is really hard. Okay, so she was, I'm really sorry. She's, okay, so let me just put this out here. My daughter passed away a year ago. She's, 10 days is her 1-year anniversary. She was, I found out she started, after she didn't go into athletics, she started experimenting with drugs in high school. Not a lot, it was just marijuana. But anyways, she was, after high school, she had some issues with drugs, and she was able to get clean and sober. Anyways, the reason why I feel that this vote is so important is because of the fact that we as a community, there's not a whole lot we can do. She passed away because she was given a Xanax, and it was really fentanyl, so she was poisoned by fentanyl. At this point, the way things are is it's in everything. I'm very involved with the addiction recovery community. I'm the women's director of Recovery Road, and so I'm seeing everything that's going on in our community when it comes to drugs and alcohol and abuse and the kind of things that are going on. So at this point, it's in the fentanyl is in the wax, in pens, and marijuana, and it's in every single drug. And so it's in our culture. It's so with music and everything else, it's just so glamorized. And when it comes to student athletes, it just needs to be completely disincentivized, because as you're hearing, as the students are here saying how important their sports are to them, it is that important, and it's one of the few things we can do as parents in a community to help disincentivize and get students not to use even what they think is not a big deal, smoking pot, because that's only where it starts, and you don't know how bad it can get from there. But anyways, so I'm hoping that you will consider that vote. I know that some people think, oh well, it's an invasion of privacy, but truthfully, the education, that's our right, but student athletics that's a privilege that students get to do. And so I feel like that's one way as a community we can really help to fight to have them do the best they can to not go that route, to stay focused on what's important, their education and their extracurricular activities at school. It's really hard. She also, one of her high school best friends just passed away this last Saturday, and it's just never ending. It's like it's all I hear about all the time. And what really needs to be done, realistically, is drug dealers need to be charged with murder, but it's not happening. There's nothing being done, and so we hear about these statistics going up higher and higher year over year of children dying, and it starts in high school. It really does. And so whatever we can do to help disincentivize, to make it just something that people don't want to do, children don't want to do, I just feel like as a community we need to do it. And so I hope that you will consider voting yes on the random drug testing if there's a suspected, I don't know all the details of the vote, but if there's a suspected need. I mean, I've already heard, and this is why I'm here, because there's another parent who's had an experience with their child being surrounded by people using drugs while they were also playing sports. And so I hope you will consider that, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. next person requesting to speak is Gregory Williams, who wants to speak about the bigthink.com used in the curriculum.
Howdy. I'm Greg Williams. Everybody calls me Pastor Greg. I was informed about the curriculum on modern culture in 2 of the middle schools, and I went through and I looked into it, and I found some stuff that I really think is absolutely terrible. But the first thing I want to do is say where I'm coming from. The Bible says in Proverbs 1:7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Jesus said in Matthew that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and our minds. But this modern culture class goes to bigthink.com as part of their curriculum. And in that, it has sections of videos that target students. One of them is Stephen Fry. And all these guys, I like comedians. They're funny. I do think they're funny. I'm not knocking them personally. They just need the Lord. But Stephen Fry says, his video was titled The Importance of Unbelief. If you assume there's no afterlife, he says, you'll likely have a fuller, more intense life, interesting life. That sounds exactly like the kind of thing that leads to what the previous speaker said. Next, another video, Ricky Gervais, Jesus was my invisible babysitter. It's his personal narrative of the evolution of his faith, and he describes how and why he became an atheist. Now, yeah, those are opinions, but in this curriculum also there are videos by Bill Nye, how do I escape religion? If there is a God, should we serve him? Another one, Penn Jillette, and one of his videos starts the video off with a sexting joke. This is going to be in middle schools. And then teaches people how to pray without talking to God. My favorite thing about the website, though, I must admit, is in that, after all this talk about God and how illogical God is and our utter hatred for God and the church, the first thing on the website is a video by Machio Kaku about talking about the science of time travel. It's utter lunacy. The problem I have with this entire thing is that if we're going to vote, as the Aitkin County School Board did, a class that brings up religion, that brings up the Bible, that brings up Bible stories from the book of Exodus, as Bill Nye does, then why can't we have prayer in schools? Why can't we have the 10 Commandments in schools? Why can't we have Bibles in schools? And if you tell me that we can't do that, you started it. You did that. You brought the Bible through Big Think into the classroom. So I would like the 10 Commandments back in schools. I'd like to offer our church's funding on put Bible on every desk. And I'd like prayer to the God of the Bible back in the schools in Aitkin County.
Amen.
But if you're not going to do that, even though you started it, at least let pastors go into that class and rebut some of the absolute garbage that's thrown at those kids. If you're going to have one side, you need to have the other side.
Amen.
If you're going to say that the Bible is a bunch of myths, while you're talking about time machines and how maybe we can make it happen, by all means, let me come in there and tell you time's something that God created. And you can't go back. You got to make good decisions now. Kids, you've got to make good decisions now. That's why we're here talking about this, the competitions with free, because you've got decisions to make about colleges to go to where you need scholarships that they're taking from you. You can't go back. And school board, you'll stand before God one day and answer for what you put in the classrooms of these kids. I pray for you. Our church prays for you. And I beg you, give your life to Jesus Christ, because he's the only one that can make a difference in drugs. He's the only one that can make a difference in these kids' lives. And he's the only one where you can find, as he said, he is the way, the truth, and the life. Give your souls to him. All it takes, I've got time. That's the first time I've ever been early. Ask my church. All it takes is faith. Faith isn't simply believing something. Bill Nye believes in God or he wouldn't fight that hard. His faith is believing something strong enough to change your life. And if you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, just like the Bible said he did, that he rose again the third day, just like the Bible said he did, if you believe that strongly enough to follow him, then he will change your life, and you'll have salvation through him. Thank you.
The next person who signed up to speak is Jane Page Thompson, who wants to talk about politics.
Policy. I'm not
Sorry,
talking
you're
about
right.
politics. I
Policy.
promise. I won't talk about politics.
Good, I appreciate
I
that.
promise. Jane Page Thompson.
We hear enough of the politicians.
I know, and I'm so sorry. And I'm not here today for that, but I'm here to talk about logic. Now, this room is about the size of a volleyball court, I figured out. And I figured out from talking to these ladies at the unveiling of their volleyball court at Aitkin High this morning that there are only 38 volleyball people required at a court when they're doing their multi-team games. Guess how many people we got in here tonight? 75. Now, how many people came from the Wagner area? Raise your hand. Thank you, one over there. How many people came from North Augusta? Raise your hand. If you came from North Aitkin, raise your hand. South Aitkin, raise your hand. If you came from New Ellington, Windsor, Jackson, raise your hand. If you came from Wagner, North Augusta, City of Aitkin, Midland Valley, Silver Bluff, guess what? You traveled the average distance that a competing team would travel to come to Aitkin. Because Aitkin County is what? The largest territorial county in the state, other than Beaufort. So why are we not going to let these incredible ladies play? Because they're amazing. I got so bit by the Olympic bug thinking that I am looking out at this room knowing one of these people, whether they're in red or green or blue, is going there one day, and they're going to have Aitkin next to their name. Like my friend Doug Payne did, who competed 2 weeks ago. So I want you to give them that opportunity today. Don't let their athletic directors chicken out because it's hard or because they're not sure where the money's going to come from. You have some of the smartest parents, money-raising parents, in this whole state, in Aitkin County. And if you need money to let these multi-team practices and tournaments happen, just tell the parents, they'll get you the money. If we need to do it for all the athletes, I bet they can do that for you. Because this is an important thing, because these athletes have an opportunity to take our successes in Aitkin, which in South Carolina education are few and far between, to places like Cornell or Dartmouth or Pepperdine or Yale or Princeton or even College of Charleston or Coastal Carolina or USC or what's that, Clemson, you know, those places. I did not go to school in South Carolina, but I wish today I had, because if I had teammates like they have and I have parents that are engaged like they have, I think I would have turned out a much better person. So I'm asking you tonight to roll back whatever policy request it was that stops these multi-team events, and let's put some COVID protocols in place like you had the last 20 months and let them have a shot at it. Thank you.
That is all the public participation we have time for this evening. I apologize to those of you who signed up that we can't get to you. But we've got a long agenda and we've already well into the first hour. The next section of the agenda is the Office of Board Chairman. I'm going to pass on that. Informational items. These are items that are presented just for information only and require no board action. The first four are construction status reports. Dr. Murphy, would you like to
Chairman, board members, Mr. Lawrence. Once again, I'll bring you the latest update on our construction projects that are going on in the area. We'll begin tonight with Belvedere. Here you can see a view of the front entrance. Landscaping continues, but the irrigation system is complete. You can also see a shot of the canopy installation that's complete, and the LED sign has been installed, but we have not yet linked the power to it. This is a view. Here's a view from inside the lobby area with the flooring, and we're continuing to paint and do some touch-up work there as well. Here's a view from the amphitheater, right outside where the butterfly garden will be, as well as a view from inside looking out at that amphitheater. And this is the reception area. The schedule for completion is, scheduled completion date for occupancy is prior to August 16th, and total project completion is November 30th. So this project was budgeted at $10.7 million, and site work and demolition will be all completed by November 30th. We are on budget and on schedule at this time. Next we go to Hammond Hill. Here you can see the brick veneer. The all-new two-story building has been completed. Roofing for this new addition has also been completed, and the building is dried in completely. We've connected that new building to the existing administration wing, and the walls have been opened up between the new and existing wing as well. Work on a two-story building is approximately 65% complete at this time. Here you can see some interior shots. Renovation work in the interior existing administration wing is ongoing. You can see a shot of the new carpeting, lighting, ceiling grid, painting, and etc. that's been installed. The new LVT floor is delayed until early September on the front of the building because of supply chain issues with COVID. We will be able to have the floor. We're going to have it cleaned and as buffed out as possible to make it not look so much like a construction site, but we're going to stand by with that order because we want to have the best materials installed as we can. The administration wing renovation is approximately 85% complete. This project is budgeted at $15.2 million, and we are on target for phase one to be completed in January of 2022. Millbrook is rolling along quite nicely. Since the June board meeting, the contract has made steady progress at Millbrook. OSF final inspection was passed, and occupancy has been granted for teachers and staff. The site work along East Pine Log Road is underway and scheduled to be completed by today. Demolition is in progress. 3 of the 5 existing structures slated for demolition have already been demolished. And anybody driving by, you can see I don't have a shot of it, but the paving is taking place in the front of the building, and it's getting rid of all that mud that we were suffering from all those times. This project is budgeted at $9.6 million. It's on budget, and we did adjust it previously because of the rain delays, pushed it back a little bit to October 30th, but we're definitely on track and scheduled to open up on time. And yesterday, Yesterday, we did have a wonderful ribbon cutting for Richmond Manila Elementary School, and so we're open and we're ready to receive students, and it's been a wonderful project, and we had a wonderful tour with the press there available as well. So we're scheduling our next grand opening and dedications about 6 weeks out, so you have plenty of notice to come and participate as well. Any questions you have for me?
Dr. Murphy, I just wanted to ask, I think they had the ribbon cutting scheduled for August 12th at Belvedere Elementary. Has that been moved out now because of the construction issues?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and do you have the new date in mind? Because I haven't heard the new
No,
date.
we'll work that out. We'll work with everyone and put that out. So
Okay.
won't limitations.
Thank you.
Anybody? Thank you, Dr. Appreciate it. Next item is the report of minority purchases for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2021. We're required to post a list of all the purchases, all the minority-owned businesses that we make purchases from, and that's what that is. The next item is report of sole source and emergency purchases for the fiscal year ending in June 30th. We have to follow a procurement code unless we find ourselves in an emergency when we have to buy something that we don't have time to go through the procurement code process. An example of that is it took 1 year for us to get a sound system put in this room because of going through the procurement process. Sometimes we can't afford to do that, but we have to report those purchases when we do not follow that requirement. The consent items, we go through these as a group, and then we'll vote on them at the end. The first item is out-of-district transfer request. These are requests from students who, from outside the district who want to come into the district, and they require permission from the board to do that. The next item is the out-of-district transfer request, which is the same kind of thing, except these are our students who wish to go to school in another district. The third item is the John Brophy donation to Midland Valley High School for FY '22. Mr. Brophy is giving a donation of $5,000 to the boys basketball program to buy equipment and supplies. The Laura Bush Foundation for American Library grant award to Mossy Creek Elementary School. This foundation gives money to grants to libraries who apply and have appropriate reason to get the money. We're getting $5,000 from that foundation, and it will be used to buy books, e-books, magazines, and so forth. Number 5 is a consideration of one-time athletic funds.
Mr. Chairman, that's the item we moved to.
That's the one we moved, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
C items, these are ones that we consider, well, B, we need a motion to approve. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second by Ms. Shealy. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. C items, personnel appointments. You've received a list of people being recommended by the administration for employment with the school district. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Silas?
Line number 57, I know that to be what I would imagine to be a paperwork mistake unless Ms. Hart knows something that I do not. So if that is the case, then I would suggest that line 57 be removed from the list.
I can verify. Take just a second.
Ms. Hart will be able to verify that, but a motion could be made to remove it.
Well, right now, we just made a motion to remove it.
Okay, so then I'd move to remove line 57 until such time that it's verified as the status.
All right. Second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's it. Now we need a motion to approve the remainder of the list without, is there a motion?
I'll then move to approve the remainder of the list.
Second by Ms. Shealy. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's it. Second item is to review policies and administrative rules in the instructional session of the board policy manual. What we need to do tonight is have a motion to confirm the review, which is required by policy BG. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to confirm the review.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Silas. Seconded by Ms. Reinhardt Jackson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Third item is to update and revise policy AD school district mission, second reading. We've had this once before. Is there any discussion of this item? If not, entertain a motion to approve on second reading. Moved by Ms. Reinhardt, seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. Number 4 is the revision of policy GBEB staff conduct, second reading. 5 is the revision of policy GCC, professional staff leaves and absences, second reading. And policy GDC, staff support leaves and absences, second reading. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Smith. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moe. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Sixth item is the reinstate policy IKAA testing examinations. During COVID, we had to defer that policy, rescind it. And now this is a motion to reinstate the policy as it was originally in place before COVID. And is there a motion to rescind policy IKAA testing? Reinstate it, sorry, the policy.
I move to reinstate policy IKAA.
Moved by Mr. Silas, seconded by Ms. Shealy. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Number 7 is to rescind temporary policy ADD, face coverings. We originally had this policy requiring face coverings, and now we rescinded because of the legislature. So, is there a motion? Nobody wants to?
I'll move to rescind temporary policy ADD face coverage.
Moved by Mr. Silas, seconded by Mr. Smith. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's it. You voted for that, didn't you?
Yes.
All right, number 8, the consideration of proposed ESSA 3 spending plan. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to that? Can't do a do-over now, Mr. Fuller.
No, sir, this is, I appreciate that. I sent an email to communications@acpsd.net on August 8th, and specifically regarding item number 1 in the ESSER 3 plan for July 27, 2021, and that was item 1, learning loss. So I would direct the board's attention to learning loss and additional years on currently approved contracts for resources. And the specific item I want to ask about is SEL screener for high school. This is included in what looks like something that apparently has been got additional years of approval, I'm assuming, but it is specified in item number 1, learning loss, and we know that learning loss is in fact part of the ESSER 3 entitlements, and also is one of the categories that you're going to support. So I would like the board to please clarify for the public what the SEL screener position actually is, and whether or not there are other SEL screener positions in middle schools or elementary schools and in any other grades. And I would like the board to clarify, if they could, what duties that SEL screener performs and what policies they are authorized by, and who reviews their efficiency and who decides how that position is refunded, and the number of years that it is perpetuated for, and how that position is trained, and then what are the qualifications to be put into that position. And not to go back to what I spoke of before, but this appears to only be identified for high school. So if the board, with all due respect, would please identify what that position is, how you hire it, how you train them, how you evaluate them, how you supervise them, and whether or not that is in any other positions, including either teacher or management or support staff. I would appreciate that if you could make that available to the public. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is not an individual. That's not a position, an FTE or anything like that. It's an assessment. So we're required by law to assess our students. It's part of the threat assessment process, suicide prevention, drug use. There are a lot of issues that are concerns, and predominantly in high school, although also in middle and elementary schools. But this one is specifically for threat assessments in high schools. So that's what that is there for. It's not a position, it's an assessment that, that guidance counselors would use in determining threat levels for our students.
Anyone else?
Jane Page Thompson. I hope that with this onslaught of extra money, I'm not gonna talk politics, I promise, right? I hope that you will allow a citizens group to be formed to do a curriculum audit. I believe we've heard from a pastor tonight, and we've heard from Mr. Paulin tonight, and I've actually heard in your own dialogue with each other issues that maybe SEL isn't addressing. So maybe we are so focused in our bubbles, and COVID has really highlighted what bubbles do, that we forget that maybe an outside perspective or an alternative perspective may be necessary. And as one of the people in this community for the last 20 years that has reviewed every public opportunity to look at textbooks, we have a problem. And I've come to this body before in its many different forms with those concerns over the years. They fall on deaf ears, they get dropped. I was told there's not enough money. Well, we got money now, right? So take $500 of that ESSER money and give a citizen panel the ability to look at every single piece of curriculum in the school district. So that if there are concerns like what the pastor talked about, or there are concerns like what Mr. Paulin talked about, or if there are some curriculum-based references that make it okay to say, hey, we don't have to work hard to figure out a solution to let the volleyball team play. Maybe we need to do some critical thinking, problem-solving classes that we don't have. And maybe that's something that a citizen panel reviewing your curriculum could highlight to you, give you some suggestions. Look at alternative curriculum that teachers, because they live in their bubble and they know their world, may not have thought of. I know I'm in real estate, I'm in politics, and sometimes I live in my bubble. But I have a lot of friends who yank me out of my bubble and go bang, bang on my head. And they're right half the time. So I think having a citizen review committee that's gonna look at everything that you're gonna do, especially when you're gonna expand the technology ability of this school, is really important. And I know you all are researching the ability to turn that smart board camera on, or to put a camera in a classroom. So if you've got a kid that's home with mono, or a kid that's home with COVID quarantine, they can attend their class through that camera. Now I know flipping that switch for that dual modality teaching might be an increase in your budget, but maybe having cameras in the classrooms, those kids that need to be protected, I was one of them in elementary and middle school. I had to be protected. So I know what it was like to have to sit behind a screen during parent-teacher, grandparent day at school. So it's not a hard thing to accomplish. So let's get some cameras in the classrooms with this new technology that you're gonna have a couple, 20 million to spend on. Let's let each classroom have cameras in it so we can increase our student attendance. If they can't get physically to school, they can get there on a screen. COVID taught us that. We're gonna increase our graduation rate. We're gonna increase our middle school participation rate if we do that. And let's let some citizens come in and look at this curriculum and see what it can do to give you some alternatives. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. We have a request from the administration to approve the spending plan as presented. Is there a motion to approve the spending plan? I'll move that we approve the spending plan.
I'll second just for discussion.
Discussion,
Yes, sir, please, if I may.
please. Okay.
In our last meeting, under the bullet point of new ESSER, new activities in ESSER 3, in instructional supplies such as science lab equipment for high schools, calculators, and fine arts supplies identified as a proposed spend of $347,000. In our last meeting, I suggested to the district that we take some strong consideration to that amount, which I felt like was underfunded or light, because I imagine, but I don't know for sure, that these kinds of things in a typical budget year are probably hard to come by for our schools. Lab equipment, calculators, fine arts supplies. I suggest that we consider strongly to increase that. Further, I saw this as a great opportunity to meet a need and requested spend for band equipment across the district that needed to be upgraded, replaced, etc. We've got an opportunity here that we don't normally have, and I know a presentation was made to the board back during budget times for this, and maybe during the normal, regular budget, we didn't feel like there was a place for it, but here I think is a place for it. In asking about this, I expressed my displeasure that did not seem to be considered, but perhaps it was, so I'd like to give the district an opportunity to explain why an update was not made in this area. So I'd be glad to hear that, because I still feel like that's a need, and I feel like perhaps some other areas may be overfunded and some things could be shifted around to support this area a little better.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, Mr. Silas, I may ask Ms. Glover to help me to respond to some of that. But we have spent some time getting some information from band directors and looking at what we purchased in recent years and what we have budgeted in recent years, and attempted to get some specifics on what the various band programs would need. We also have access potentially to another huge pot of money specifically for fine arts that the State Department of Education carved out from its ESSER funds for the South Carolina Arts Commission, which we have access to through grants. So there are many avenues that we can use to get the funding to increase the number of band equipment, or replace instruments, and those kinds of things. So we're looking at various means of doing that. Is there anything else that?
I appreciate that. Mr. Lawrence, we have surveyed our band directors, but we didn't know what their needs were. Was that enough as a pot of money? Mr. Lawrence referred to the other pots of money. The specific grant with the State Department, $20 million was given to the South Carolina Arts Commission. So we were going to try to tap into that by writing a sub-grant for not only the visual arts, but also our performing arts. Instruments could certainly be funded out of that. And so now that we're getting the information from them, we'll know better how much money we need to ask for. But we also have Title IV money, that's whole child money, that you're encouraged to make sure that you focus on the arts. And so that's what we've used in the past to address some of those needs. So we didn't forget them. Also, we have the opportunity to amend as we go. So we do have some categories that we know we've probably over budgeted, but until we have that information, we didn't add it. But we certainly, it's on the radar, and we're trying to get all the information we can so we know how much we need to budget.
I can appreciate the opportunity, as you mentioned it, to tap into this $20 million fund for the whole state, but that's just it right now. It's an opportunity. It's a grant that we're applying for. It may not be approved, so what's the saying, the bird in the hand's better than two in the bush. I mean, that'd be a great supplement to anything we can do, but so I've stated my opinion, and I still stand by the fact that I think we need to do a better job right here, and I want to make sure, and I'm not accusing anyone of this, but poor choice of words, that we don't provide some lip service here, that we can shift some things around later, and then it goes away. So that's my concern.
I have a question. I don't know if I need to. I have a question. I don't know if I need to
Mr. Lawrence or Ms. Glover, but there was a point made tonight as the lady was talking about the band situation and the concession stuff, that there's a $225 fee, I believe was the amount mentioned? $250, just to be in the band.
Yep.
Back in 1983-84, Villa Valley High School had 250 people in the marching band. And it has slowly dwindled down because the cost of being in the band has grown tremendously. And I'm missing something too. And I want to ask, since we have these funds, is there any way we can allocate some of those funds to cut some of these band fees down that these kids have so that we can make it available to kids that may not have the money, nor the parents may not be able to, for whatever reason it may be, to get out and work and help earn money to pay for it? Is there an avenue in these ESSER funds for us to be able to assist these kids at these schools? These kids work hard. It's hot, they're working. But how many good people, kids, are we missing out on because they can't afford to be there and they're too embarrassed to say, my family can't afford it?
I don't know if the 15 categories of ESSER would allow for that, but we'll certainly investigate it.
I would appreciate it, and I appreciate getting back to me on it, because I know kids that say they like being it, but the parents say, no, it's too much money. And to me, that's the way we can serve kids directly, to help them develop maybe some skills they would not have had the opportunity to. Thank you.
Anybody else? These funds are directly given to us to make up for damages done by COVID. And it's not to do just whatever we want to with. They have to be tied to some impact from COVID in order for us to qualify for them. I don't have a clue whether this does or not. I'm not taking a position on it. Just for the audience, I think it's important that you understand that. Anything else about it?
Quick comment.
Let's vote.
Dr. Bradley, you sort of made me think about that, and the fact that the ESSER funds are there for the impacts of COVID. It sounds like I heard from these ladies tonight that COVID had a pretty serious impact financially on band and athletic events.
Yes, that is.
So if that's the case, I think we should relook at this funding situation.
We are looking at, in fact, you've got an item coming up in a minute to give the schools $100,000 for what they lost from COVID. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I just want to throw some support around what Mr. Silas says. I just want to back up what he's saying. I think we could look at it, but my question again is, this funding is for, we can keep spending this until like 2024, right, or 2025. So obviously this is, we're not going to vote on this tonight, and we're not going to ever change it again, right?
Yes, sir, we will need amendments. I would anticipate coming to you at least every few meetings with an amendment, simply because we're gonna have amounts budgeted there that we can't just shift to something else
Right.
if the costs don't reach what we anticipated. So we'll have to come to you each time we need to shift funds, so.
Yeah.
So yes, sir, that'll be happening throughout the life of this funding.
Yeah, because I agree. I think we've got certain things overestimated, and we've got money there to do other things. But that's an opinion.
Anybody else? Just to put my 2 cents worth in, we operate kindergartens at a 25-to-1 ratio. That's higher than any other elementary grade. It's probably the most critical. I have argued every time we've discussed money, Having said that, if there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote. Is there a motion to approve the recommendations by the administration?
Motion that we approve.
Dr. Hanks moves that we,
I'm gonna second with them so we can discuss them.
all right, Mr. Smith seconds. Further discussion?
I don't mind, I'm a little bit confused here. If we approve this tonight, we've asked to go back and look at a specific area. If we approve this tonight, then the plan as it is will be, without us being able to go back and look for the assistant that I talked about for the band. Now, I'm not in favor of it if we can't go back and look at that and see if it will work, if we can use it.
So we'll have the ability to offer amendments as throughout the next 3 years.
I heard that. I just want to make sure that we put that on the forefront and we look at how we can use some of those funds to help some of these kids.
Anything else? All right, got a motion second. All in favor of approving the plan as submitted, please raise your hand. Opposed? Two opposed.
Three.
Okay. Let's vote over again. All in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? 3. Plan's approved. Motion's approved. All right, C10 was formerly B5. It's consideration of one-time athletics fund.
Are we moving that ahead at 9, Dr. Bradley? It's fine for me, but I just want to make sure that that's what you want to do.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. I do that every time just to keep everybody honest. Just checking y'all. We'll go back. This is a fairly significant one that I skipped. Is the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds for 2021. It requires, we're asking the board to approve the issuance of $18,500,000 in bonds for the year. It's in compliance with the law, which governs how much we can borrow in this manner. And we have already budgeted the funds in our 5-year building program. So, having said that, is there a motion to approve the resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of the general obligation bond?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Sheehan. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Now, unless I'm making another mistake, we're back to B5, which is now 10C.
Yeah, Dr. Bradley, I'd like to make a motion here, but it's a little bit different than what was recommended by the district. So before I move, I'd like to maybe expand on it or explain, and then if we get to discussion, maybe we'll talk more about it. So just to state, the recommendation is that the district, I think, has recommended we provide $10,000 to each of the major high schools and something less than that. Are you looking at it, Dr. Bradley? Could you help me out, clean me up there a little bit as to the amount that we're requesting for?
It's $10,000 for 3A and 4A, $8,000 for 2A schools, which is only one of them, and $7,000 for the single A schools, which is Rich Spring and Wagner South.
Okay, so that's what's recommended, and my motion is to be a little more than that and a little different, because I'm not sure what kind of input came from athletic directors. If we get a discussion, perhaps we can get that. But I think it's a great start, and I truly appreciate the district for making the move to do that. Believe me, I'm not being critical of that whatsoever. It's much appreciated and certainly would help if that were the only thing we approved. But just from what I know, South Carolina High School League dues eats up $5,000 of that. I know Midland Valley has about $1,000 pool rental, that's another 1,000 gone. And there are probably a couple of other things that are just general operating items that takes that away like that. Certainly it's a help again, but if the goal here is to truly help our athletic programs dig out of a little hole from last year or the last 18, 24 months, then I think we need to do more. So with that, I'll make a motion that we, two things different, that we, one, treat all the high schools the same in terms of the dollar value, and that we move that from $10,000 to $20,000 for each school. That would be 7 high schools, $20,000, $140,000 plus the middle school amount, which I would remain the same as part of my motion.
May I?
You
Second.
Second first.
Second for discussion, thank you.
Move and
Keep
second.
me on.
Discussion.
I'm asking for the floor. I'm a little different than Mr. Silas, even though I'm totally in agreement with spending many years at the middle school. Spending many years at the middle school, there's a lot of expenses that are incurred there. Helmets cost $400 a piece, and we can't even find them yet for this year because they're so far behind. I would like to see that increase for the middle schools as well. And what they make and what they put back into their athletic programs is what they make at the gate. There again, they didn't make a whole lot last year, but I would like to increase that as well too. And I don't know, maybe $5,000 because it's been years since we've given them any money to purchase equipment and help upgrade. They need some help too.
Anybody else? Mr. Dustin?
Yeah, but before we go to a vote or anything like that, so my question, regardless of the variant that we have, is what information do we have of essentially what our losses are? I think it's a great idea, but to kind of back up what Mr. Silas said, I just like to have we keep books, right? I'd like to know exactly how much the high schools and middle schools are in the hole. And if it's only, say, $11,000, I'm not, right now, not thinking to give them $20,000, if you follow me. So I'd just like more information.
I'm going to ask Dr. Murphy to speak a little bit to that. It's considerably more than $10,000. $10,000 number was the amount that would take care of some of those major things so that they would be able to get started with their seasons this year without having the burden of worrying about what gates were going to be like. So that was the rationale for bringing the proposal to the board.
One question before Dr. Murphy, can you also address how we came up with the allocation
Right.
amount?
Similar, same question. Thank you, Dr. Hanks.
Very good. I met with the athletic directors on actually about 4 occasions to discuss the losses. And first of all, I would like to say our intent was not to make them whole because we don't have that mechanism to fund an entire athletic program, and so we could not. So when we started talking about what were their actual needs, I came up with a chart based on what they reported, and I'm sitting there looking. The average loss, the shortfall they had was about $20,000 for the larger schools, and between $7,000 and $12,000 for the smaller schools. And then we go back through and look at their average cost for, let's say, the 4 major things, which was South Carolina High School League dues, the South Carolina Coach Association dues, and the huddle video. And so the $10,000 will cover their league dues, their huddle video, which helps them get their film together for the students and for recruiting videos as well, and their coaching dues for each of the schools. The amount, basically, because it varies differently based on the size of the schools. So you have some schools that have 1,600 kids, you have some schools that have 300 kids, and so their athletic department's needs they're varied. And so what we did basically was a ratio. So what this ends up doing is giving them approximately 50% of their shortfall and approximately covering their major needs. Now, we checked, each school has a healthy balance. So the schools are not without any money, their programs are without any money. So we would take on half of that, they would take on half of that, and then hopefully in a year, a solid year coming up and another good solid year, we could be back whole again. But there was no real plan to say, hey, for all the money that you failed to make this year, you failed to earn last year, we're gonna give it to you as a district, because there, we don't have a mechanism like that to refund that.
I want to make one point, and I appreciate what you're saying, Dr. Murphy. I mean, that was my life for many years, working in athletics and trying to pinch a dollar to get whatever we could. I do want to make this, I've had athletes tell me they were not included. That for one in this decision. Rich Spring Manetta may not have the same amount of sports as North Augusta, but they have the same type of expenses, just as they do. They have to keep up everything, just like North Augusta does as far as field maintenance. I know the district handles maintenance, but whatever they need for their fields and so forth and so on. Same thing for the band folks. They gotta keep up their field too. And as far as the amount of money that is being requested, that is wonderful. Like Mr. Silas said, that is wonderful. They need help. They've been needing help. There was several years back we had to help. The point I want to make is that money's going to pay the high school league, that other stuff you saw, coaches clinic, coaching dues and that kind of stuff. None of that money is directly going to affect the kids that are on the marching field nor the athletic fields. And I know, and you also said that schools are financially sound. That's totally different than what I did. I've talked with Mr. Lawrence about it on numerous occasions, about this need for our kids to be able to have a little extra. Here's the thing. I was quoted that Middle Valley has more athletic money than any other school. I was blown away with that. They know what they're doing some investigating. North Augusta's money's not in their local accounts. It's in their booster club, and it's hundreds of thousands, I understand. Middle Valley kids get out and they fundraise for every one of those sports. And those sports, if that money is in there, it makes it look so good. It's where kids and coaches have fundraised to get that money there. Now, if we take, as I told Mr. Lawrence, if we take and start using the money that those kids used in softball, baseball, raise softball, baseball, basketball, track, whatever it may have been, and use it for football, that's a disservice to those kids were earning. Now, football carries itself through gate receipts. But gate receipts has not been good. You heard the lady say that they had 7,000, whatever it was in the booster club. And, excuse me, that's what they made last year. The band lady said that they had $13. We have the money to help both programs. And I go along with Mr. Silas, we need to use some of the money to put it out there. I know from an old coach, they're doing without things because they're pinching pennies. And Aitkin County has been notorious for generations of not supporting athletics as strong as they can, nor band. And I think we have an opportunity to put some money out there to help these band directors, and I think we need to do and act on that tonight.
Mr. Chairman, one more question. Dr. Murphy, what fund is this money coming from?
This is, the proposed plans are aid to schools fund.
Is the,
Aid to schools.
Aid to school fund.
Aid to districts.
Excuse me, aid to districts, yes.
It's one of our state pots, one of the EIA pots that we received. We hit it throughout the year, for unexpected things. We are using it to balance this year's budget, and we typically carry over some amount. We've used it in the past for some other unexpected items.
Is that fund so strapped that it couldn't accommodate another, what, $10,000 times 7 high schools?
I think it's something that it could withstand. But one thing, and it's come up in the past, we do utilize those carryover funds, and we are utilizing it this year to balance the budget. Something that we've avoided some years. So if something unexpected comes up, a lot of times that's an allocation that we'll look at. But we do have the ability to carry that over for one year typically.
Thank you. Let me say something quickly again, Dr. Murphy. I feel maybe like there's some negative energy around this, and I don't want it to be like we're kind of attacking you over this. It's certainly not the case, please. Because it is a positive thing. I'm just requesting with my motion that we do more, and that we can do more, and that it's well needed. So I just wanted to state that.
I want to say the same thing. I appreciate what you said, Dr. Murphy, and the funds that you proposed to be allotted and everything. But I do agree with Mr. Silas and Mr. Smith that I would like to see us do more for athletics and for bands, and do it across the board for all the schools equally, because I know representing Ridge Spring and Wagner, they are smaller schools, but as you said, Mr. Smith, they have the same expenses in keeping up the facilities and the equipment and that kind of thing. And those smaller areas just simply don't have the opportunity to raise funds, you know, in the booster clubs, because they don't have the number of businesses and the number of people. So that would be a huge help to those areas too. So I would be very appreciative of that.
I'm sorry,
That's okay. I just wanted one clarification, because I'm not sure that I'm convinced that it was an affirmation from Mr. Traxler that we stand posed to be okay by using an additional $70,000 or $80,000 of those funds.
But something like
We would be. I don't think it would put us in a problem spot for this year. Again, these are things in any given year. This pot is one that we would use for unanticipated items, for some mid-year items. We've hit it in the past. If this were a situation where we were cutting too deep, I would let the board know. Even without the crystal ball, I don't think the increase is something that would hurt us.
Appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Should I restate the motion, Dr. Bradley?
If you'd like, please.
And restate and then perhaps amend after Mr. Smith's comments. So my motion would be that we increase the amount for each high school equally from 10, the recommended 10, to $20,000, and that the middle schools be increased to 5,000. That's the motion.
I'll second.
Yeah, and so, I'm still wrapping my head a little bit around it, so I totally get it, but no matter how big the school is, if you have sports programs, they can cost the same. I get it, but then we also have high schools that are 4 times the size of other ones. So we say their expenses are the same.
One of the major differences is a school like Aitkin High School has a lot more sports than Wagner South. And football is the major source of revenue for high school athletics, other than what the district gives them. And they have to take money from the football revenue to finance volleyball, for example. So that's the only way that same number of jerseys and shoulder pads and shoes and all that kind of stuff. So there's a good argument to be made about the not basing the money on the size of the school, except that there is a difference, like the number of teams you have to finance and that sort of thing. But on an individual basis, I imagine the cost per student is not a major variable. It'd be maybe the cost of the participant.
And what I want to say is, to elaborate a little bit further, I know I was a band mom and a football mom and a golf mom, and, I know the amount of money that it takes in the different sports and everything, and I know that even though Ridge Spring and Wagner are smaller, like I said, the bigger schools have more opportunities through booster clubs and through other fundraisers, because they are bigger schools and they have more people. They can raise more money to help supplement than the smaller schools like Wagner and Ridge Spring that have a limited number of businesses and limited number of people. So that's why I want us to take that into consideration and offer the same amount across the board and treat all the schools equally.
I think we're down to saying the same thing over and over again, so let's not.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something before we take that.
Go ahead.
When Ridge Spring Magnetic takes a bus and takes their football team to school in Columbia, it costs them, it used to be 80-something cents a mile. What is it now?
We use our activity buses, so it's whatever the cost of fuel and everything, and the driver is for that.
They don't have the activity buses in a lot of cases. How much is it they have to charge a mile plus put gas back in?
I'm not certain about the cost per mile, but the board has allocated approximately $50,000 for athletics transportation for high schools. So they draw upon that to help reimburse for those travel costs to away events.
Does the board, does the district offset the cost of officials? Because they're essentially the same. Now, you got the little pay differences in the levels because of the scoring system with the high school league. So they're still, is there any having that pay for officials?
That's typically at the local level, at the school levels, they will cover those.
That's my point.
Yes, sir.
It may seem like, and I was a head coach at a 1A school, I had 18 players, and I was having to do everything that North Augusta and Aitkin High School were doing at that time. And it was super hard for us to do it. We didn't have the number of people coming to the games that these other people had, and it was pretty much a wash, for a few hundred, maybe $700–800 as I can remember. If we made that much profit off a game, we were excited. Where larger schools were making $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000. But yet we had to put them on the field with the same thing. We had to put the band kids out there, especially the outer line band kids. A lot of them doesn't have the money to buy the instruments that they want to play. And I want to really make everybody realize it's a struggle. And it's time we step up and help these folks a little bit. So they come out and have $1,000, $2,000 on their head at the end of the year. That's some good money to help them start the next year. To me, I understand about the probably having more sports teams, but the expenses are still there and they're still the same. If you take 2 buses from Ridge Spring and Netta, you take 2 buses from North Augusta and send them both to Columbia, they both got paid the same thing. Let's don't lose sight of that.
All right, we've heard a great deal of discussion. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? You're not opposed?
No, sir. No, sir. I'm just being extra
All right.
supportive.
2 opposed. Motion passed. Okay. I think that takes us down through the C section. Now we're down to the individual board member
apologize for my level of participation tonight. I normally prefer to keep a
Really
little,
going, you're on the road.
I keep a lower profile, but such is not the case tonight, and I think for good reason. The first one's a relatively easy one. We had an Area 3 council member resign, Mr. Rodney Way, due to he relocated out of the district. So I'd like to thank him for his service. Mr. Way, while he's only been on the advisory council for just a couple of years, he's been involved with our schools for quite a while with PTOs, student improvement councils, et cetera. So appreciate his continued involvement. And he plans to, continue to participate through his employer. I think they just sponsored, I don't think I'm wrong about this, a teacher breakfast this week in Middle Valley. If he didn't do this one, he has before. So we look forward to his continued involvement. He's serving on the 1 cent sales tax committee, but he moved out of the area and resigned. So I would like to move to replace him with Mr. Lance Thomas.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That's everyone. All right, Mr. Silas.
Okay. So the second one has to do with random drug testing, and I promised in the last, maybe not last meeting, but the one before, some introduction, gave you a lot of information to consider, and left you to your own devices to research that, think about it, maybe talk to people. Received some publicity in the media. Local newspaper published an article, and it was quite a bit of feedback there. Granted, with some of the comments, I'm pretty sure many of them didn't even read the article. But some of the questions that I've gotten pointed at me were, why are you behind this? And I stated that night, and I'll restate now, it's really, really simple. And the lady that spoke tonight is a prime example of that. It's one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to prevent our students, our young men and women, from experimenting with drugs, starting with drugs, leading to other things. That's the only purpose. Nothing else behind it whatsoever. Would I like it to be expanded to the entire student body? Yeah, probably so. But from my research and discussion, it seems to be most developed with student athletes, right? Because it is a privilege to participate in these sports. And so that's the primary purpose behind this. It came about because a parent approached me because of their experiences. And so I began to look at it and think about it long and hard, and thought it was certainly a worthwhile stance to take. Also, from my personal knowledge and experience with my son with an athletic team in the area who just graduated last year, but just some knowledge of some things that I knew went on with this athletic team, where perhaps if we had a program in place where a student would think that they could be selected for a random test, that might have prevented some of that from happening. May have. Could even save a life. And you think I'm maybe over dramatic, but it's not. One hit from this oil that maybe they've purchased thinking it's THC, it could have fentanyl in it, and that's all it takes. So, and it is a problem. If you don't believe it, ask your principals if vaping is a problem. Yes, it's sometimes just the nicotine, but I'm concerned about it being more serious. And so tonight with the motion, it's not to approve a policy. We're not going to start testing next week. It's to ask the district to develop a policy, which we would then be involved, hopefully to some extent, in developing, and then review and approval just like any other policy. So we would have many other opportunities to shape that policy. My vision right now is that again, as I stated last time, it's non-punitive. It's to identify a potential problem, let the parent know, let it be addressed, counseling, all meant to be upfront. It's no academic consequences. The law enforcement's not involved. It's not anything that's going to carry a record with them past graduation. It's to identify the problem. We'll decide what the consequences may be. Maybe it's only canceling. Maybe they don't ever miss a game. Maybe they don't miss a game until it's 3 times they've called. That's yet to be determined. So my motion will be just to approve the district to proceed in developing a policy. Dr. Murphy has been involved with districts where this has been in place. My hallway talk with them is it's just not been a big deal at the places he's been. And I don't mean that to say it wasn't a big deal coming up with the policy, but, and he spoke a little bit last time on that his experience has been positive with it. The high school league has a anti-doping policy already in place. That's come about, so there's no issues there. There are no legal issues to developing this. Other districts in the state do it, as I said. You got to stand for something, right? And I've decided that this is worth standing for if we can prevent a young man or woman from using drugs. Last thing, I'm going to read very quickly and then I'll make the motion. I want to read what was stated in one of the papers I gave you. I think it's worth restating from a principal of a school in the Northeast. I think it was New Jersey. Those of us charged with ensuring the safety and well-being of our students, that's us, and staff must take seriously the threat imposed by students' illegal drug use. We can no longer simply say that the measures we have employed previously are enough. The challenge before school boards and communities is clear. We need to do a better job helping our teenagers say no to drugs. That's the basis. It's a simple purpose. So with that, I would move that the district develop a policy, move forward with developing a random drug testing policy for our student athletes, band, and any other major sporting activity that they see fit.
I will second.
Discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bradley. I was curious, and maybe I should already know this for anyone here from the district. What kind of drug education program do we have in Aitkin County? I mean,
I'm going to ask Ms. Glover to respond to that.
So it's addressed in the standards, what we have to cover, and then we have clubs at our elementary schools, but we have to educate them. But as far as a standard curriculum, we have standards from the state that we have to address, and I can get those to the board if you'd like those.
yeah, and my question really goes to, because I don't know, it's a real question. I don't want to necessarily jump to testing these kids that are involved in extracurriculars randomly if we're not even educating them on the dangers of drugs.
That's
And-
part of it, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And some of the things, do we know, and I know this comes from Mr. Silas, this comes from a very compassionate place to try to help our kids. But one of the things I think about is, we've got, we don't even know how much something like this would cost. We've got limited resources and like bang for your buck about the health of our children. And so I'm curious, the limited amount of feedback I got from where I could from districts that do this, it was kind of the feedback I got was kind of neutral. You're absolutely right, Mr. Sal. I never found anything where it was a negative connotation. I don't think there was a lot of backlash. I'm just not sure how much good it did. And if anybody has any information around that, I'd like to hear it.
Anybody else?
And I'm sorry, and just and the last ones, those really were questions I would like to know. And the last one is not a question, it's a point. Right now, as I sit here today, I do have an issue with starting a random drug testing program with these kids. when we don't even do that with our employees. And I think and for that and that alone, you will not see me be in favor of this unless we clean our own house, so to speak, and make sure that our organization is drug-free before we start testing my kids, my kid who's in band, thanks applies to this, right? And everyone else's kids for wanting to play football. Anyway, I'm done.
Also, I ditto a lot of what you said, Mr. Nussel. My concern would be the costs being prohibitive on this program with no real end result as to what we do when we find positive students. The other issue is I don't like the selectivity of just band and athletes, because my heart literally went out for that mother who had to stand before us and talk about her daughter. But if you listen to what she said, this program that we are considering would not have captured her student, because her student was neither band nor an athlete. So if we're going to say random drug testing, it would probably need to be a wide net cast. I just could not see what we would gain from this by just selecting those students.
I sort of agree with that. Having been an area superintendent for a number of years and then sitting on the board for 16, hearing the discipline every expulsion case, the problem was not with athletes. I hate to say it, but the problem was not with the athletes. It's with a bunch of kids that didn't have anything, any group to belong to, and so forth. I mean, I'm sure there were athletes who used drugs, but that's not where the major problem is. And the feedback I've gotten, people have gotten wind that this is being talked about out there. The feedback I've gotten from the public, the small number of people who talked to me about it, it's just what Mr. Nussel says. He said, they're telling me that if you're going to test anybody, you need to test your teachers. Now, teachers are not going to like that. I don't mean to pick on teachers. But the reason for that is because they are the ones who get, when a teacher does something bad, it's all over the newspaper. And we've had 2 or 3 of those happen the last couple of years. That's what gets the public attention. I think if I were going to support drug testing, it would be probably everybody. I mean, certainly the whole student body rather than pick out athletes. But it is going to be expensive. I don't know the best way to make a really good decision about this. I would like it studied in some way to see how big our problem is, and rather than just in the middle of the year, start the ball rolling. When we approve a motion to start developing the policy, that's giving tacit approval to starting a drug testing program. There's no point in doing a policy unless you're going to start the program. Of course, it'd be a whole lot easier to vote on whether to start the program or not after you know what it really is, rather than just something floating around out there.
I have another comment, but Mr. Moulton was before me, please.
Okay.
Dr. Bradley, thank you. I just wanted to say, I think, I certainly was moved, and I know what Mr. Silas is trying to do after hearing him 2 meetings ago. I think it's a good intention. I think we would all agree. I think what Mr. Nussel and what Dr. Hanks is saying is also right, and even what you're saying, Dr. Bradley. I think probably, Mr. Silas, if we helped you as a board here, I think you're on the right track. I think we should consider asking the district to research the cost involved, the application of not just student athletes, but maybe a wider net, as Dr. Hanks mentioned, as well as the results of such an action that Mr. Nussel mentioned, because if we spend a bunch of money and it has no results, that would be sort of silly. So I think it's a combination of what everybody's saying. I had the privilege of sitting here listening to everyone, or I wouldn't have come up with that. But I think if we ask them to research it, give us a cost, give us the results, look at what's happening in other districts, because I've heard two of you say it seemed to be very low impact, and so I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if that means low impact like it didn't do anything, or low impact like nobody really minded the program. But I'd like to know that it's doing something for our dollar. And I definitely agree. I don't think it's limited to athletes. I think I agree with Dr. Hanks and Dr. Bradley. I think it goes far beyond athletes. And listen to that mom tonight. Her child didn't participate in athletics any longer. And so if we're going to do it, and if it makes economical sense to do it, then I think we should expand it beyond athletes. That's all.
One last thing to add to what you said, Mr. Moulton, is I would like to have researched the legalities of doing it as well. Hands down.
Yeah, if I can maybe close it up, unless you see fit to give the floor to someone. I appreciate everybody's comments, I really do. I think you've done what I wanted, and that's considered it seriously, and I really appreciate it. It's gonna be a hard thing to measure, I think. What's success? Getting 100 positive cases? Getting none? I mean, if we get none, maybe it's doing its job. So it's hard, I think it's gonna be hard to say, is it worth it or not? Is it worth it if it saves one child from getting, but it's hard to say, yes, I saved that child from trying, from buying a hit off of this vape pen. So it's gonna be hard to measure. But one of the policies I think that Dr. Murphy or the district shared with us was for the entire student body. I'm certainly open to that. As far as testing teachers, I mean, to me, that was really out of the scope or realm of my consideration. Do I agree with it? Yes. Most employers do have a random drug testing policy. Don't know why we don't. That was a little bit more involved for me, and so I narrowed the focus to student athletes, because that's where I saw most districts in this state and across the country had focused in that area at least first. So that's why I chose that. Agree, Dr. Bradley. Casting that wider net, guys, is the thing to do. That certainly, makes you consider cost a little more. You look at what percentage. I mean, those are all things that would come out in developing a policy. What percentage of students or student athletes, and one policy even, any student that drove a car on campus. So I think, sensing kind of the reading the room, if you will, perhaps I can restate my motion.
Is it gonna change it?
Well, I tell you what, why don't we just keep this motion in place and see what happens, and then I may choose to make one after that, okay? Can we do that?
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and do it, Mr. Silas' motion? All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Is there a second? I would like a second. Now, have a second.
Yeah, so then I guess I read the room correctly. That I would then move that the district investigate further the possibilities of developing a random drug testing program and the scope of such program, and report back to us associated cost versus benefits.
Second. Second by Mr. Moe. Any discussion? I would like to see this done in a timely way, so that if it passes, so that we could, I think the appropriate time to be considered is at the budget time.
Very well.
All in favor, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, thank everyone.
You got something? You got something?
I think that's it for me, thank you.
All right. The last thing, it's still successful. On the agenda for the open session is superintendent's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I am truly excited about the beginning of the new school year. Our teachers and school leaders are spending this week preparing for the arrival on Monday morning of more than 22,000 students. Those students and their parents are doing the same thing. I think everyone is eager for the new school year to get started. We do have some familiar challenges. COVID-19 infections are increasing. In fact, South Carolina and Aitkin County numbers are higher right now than they were at this time a year ago. We know more this year than we knew last year, and we're taking precautions to maintain the health and safety of our students and staff. We have air purifiers in our classrooms. We continue to work to improve ventilation and air handling. We will provide regular opportunities for hand washing with soap and water. Hand sanitizer stations are installed in all classrooms and throughout the schools whenever soap and water aren't available. Cleaning and disinfecting occur regularly with increased frequency in high-touch areas. Whenever possible, we are maintaining at least 3 feet of physical distance. We ask our students and staff to stay home when they're sick. We are contact tracing and identify close contacts of positive cases. Close contacts are being quarantined to slow the spread of the virus. We'll be limiting visitors in our schools. I know that disappoints many of our parents on the first day of school who really enjoy walking their students to their classes, but it's just something that's necessary to limit contact. If you've ever been in an elementary school on the first day of school, on the first grade and kindergarten hallways, you know that there is no way to provide for any distancing when that happens. Students and staff members are being encouraged to wear face coverings. Obviously, we can't require it, but we do encourage that. I also encourage parents to have children 12 years old and older vaccinated. These measures will go a long way toward ensuring the safety of our staff, our students, and their families. The more we can do to prevent the spread, the more likely it is that we'll be able to have fewer quarantines and are able to maintain face-to-face instruction for our students. I firmly believe that having students in their classrooms every day that is possible is crucial for their social and emotional well-being and their academic development. COVID-19 and these mitigating strategies are a distraction, but it's an unavoidable one. There are many other distractions that creep into our public school system. It's easy to get caught up in the distractions, and when that happens to me, which it does often, I stop and ask myself, is this in the best interest of our students? And I find that brings me back in line with our mission. We always ask the question, whatever the topic, whatever comes up in a public meeting, whatever comes up in a faculty meeting, whatever comes up in a district leadership meeting, whatever comes up at the coffee shop or barber shop, if it has to do with public education in Aitkin County, the question is this in the best interest of our students? The new school year is less than a week away. Let's make it a great one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. We will need a short executive session to receive legal advice on policy BID. Is there a motion that we go into executive session?
I move we go into an executive session.
Moved by Mr. Nessel, seconded by Mr. Bowman. All in favor, please raise your hand. We will take about a 5 to 10 minute break and then convene in the cabinet room. We will then, if any action is to be taken, we will reconvene the open session to take any action that's required following that
think it might be one of the students.
Okay. You too, sir. Thank you for coming. Thanks so much, sir.
Yeah, one of the middle. Yeah.
All right, we're back in open session. I would like to remind the board that we have a meeting on Thursday at 6 o'clock. That is for purposes of evaluating superintendent. While in executive session this evening, we had some discussion about legal matters concerning policy BD. No action is necessary at this time, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Nessel. All in favor, please raise your hand. I could.
We did all three like make a move at the same time.
Your name will be on the meeting.
You got it. Oh, good.
All right.
You guys have a good night.
What now?